Let's talk about schizophrenia with leading psychiatrist.
This is Dr. Sudhir Bhave. I'm a psychiatrist working from Nagpur. The topic for my today's podcast is the role of family and friends in comprehensive management of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia, as we all know, is one of the most serious mental illnesses that can afflict a person. Apart from the treatment that typically a psychiatrist would undertake, it's very important for the family and the friends to understand their role, which is significant in trying to help the patient recover from the illness and get rehabilitated. Now, first of all, let us see that if the schizophrenia is left unattended or untreated, what can be the complications? The complications can be many. For example, a patient of schizophrenia might start getting suicidal thoughts, might attempt suicide. Roughly 10% of people with schizophrenia are known to die by suicide. They worry excessively and often start living in their fantasy world, having almost no contact with the reality. They frequently get depressed by the kind of predicament they are in, by the fact that they are not able to do as much as their peer group in life. They are not productive. They might fall prey to alcohol and other substances which are addictive, like commonly in our country, it could be smoking, chewing tobacco, and so on. They lose their desire to attend their academic institutions, like they stop going to school or colleges, they stop going for work, they start facing financial difficulties. Sometimes, very unfortunately, they could become homeless if they leave home and don't find any support outside the home. They become socially withdrawn, are not able to mingle with the society. These people with schizophrenia, they often face a large number of both physical and mental illnesses because they are not looked after appropriately by the families. And lastly, they can indulge in very violent and destructive behaviors which can harm themselves or others. So all these are the complications of an untreated schizophrenia. And this is something that the family needs to guard against. Now, what are the ways in which the family or the friends can help? The ways are many, and I think we should all pay much attention to them. First of all, taking such a patient to the appropriate mental health professional is very essential. The mental health professional could be a psychiatrist, it could be a clinical psychologist, sometimes it could be a psychiatric social worker. Don't worry too much about the right specialist to be taken, because any good mental health worker will refer the patient to an appropriate specialist if he or she thinks so. And it's important to encourage the patient to undergo the treatment. One thing the family needs to understand is that whatever abnormal experiences that the patient is undergoing, like for example, hearing voices when none exist, or some kind of wrong convictions that there are people out to harm the patient or damage the patient physically or in any way. Now, these experiences for the patient are real. So the family must not brush aside these apprehensions, and they should empathize with the patient, that they understand how the patient is feeling and that they are with the patient and trying to help in whatever possible way. It's important to tell the patient that we understand you, because everyone has got a right to look at things or understand things from his or her own perspective. It's very crucial that our behavior with the patient should inculcate three properties. One, we should be respectful towards the patient as if he is still a productive member of the family. Secondly, we should be cooperative, trying to help the patient in whatever desirable activity the patient is doing. And compassion and sympathy is very important. It's always very important to be kind to the patient, to show to the patient that we are with you, do not worry, generate a kind of feeling of security within the patient's mind. But at the same time, one must not support or encourage any activity on the part of the patient which could be harmful for the patient or for others. And sometimes the patient needs to be firmly told about refraining from carrying out certain activities. In case the patient expresses a desire to commit suicide or harm someone, it's a red flag, and at such time, an immediate psychiatric help must be sought. Moreover, the patient should be encouraged to indulge in some healthy day to day habits. Now, what are these? One, a regular exercise. A regular exercise, especially in the morning, goes a long way in improving both the physical and the mental health of the patient. A regular exercise on a mental plane, it improves the concentration, it improves general intellectual abilities, it improves the memory, it improves the mood, it improves the feeling of well being, it increases the patient's own confidence, gives the patient a better body image, and so on. And this is, of course, in addition to all the physical benefits that the exercise can offer. Secondly, an adequate sleep is very important, and the family must ensure that the patient is able to sleep for at least 7 to 8 hours every single night. Because less of sleep, especially in these days of social media, when many of the patients with schizophrenia, they are engaged in looking at screens and browsing through their mobiles till late at night, it can play havoc with mental health. So all screens should be away from the patient at least 1 hour before the bedtime, which can help a better sleep. The patient should be encouraged to indulge in specific activities when he or she feels stressed. Like the patients could be taught the technique of slow and deep breathing for 2 to 3 minutes, focusing on the breath going in and the breath coming out. And this something called mindfulness breathing can significantly reduce the stress levels. Or the patient could be taught relaxation exercises. Such relaxation exercises and the breathing techniques are easily available on the internet, and the family can take the help of the internet in learning some easy to teach techniques to the patient. Moreover, it's very important to encourage the patient to stay away from alcohol, addictive drugs, as I've earlier stated, and they should get every possible help from the friends, from the family, from the professionals, in case the patient needs to get de-addicted from any of these substances to which he or she might be addicted. Diet needs to be carefully followed. A healthy, balanced diet every day is very important, especially foods containing high amounts of sugar, refined carbohydrates, and fats, especially from the outside food. The food bought outside home often contains fats which are more harmful than the ones that we find in the cooking mediums at our home. So I think these few kinds of foods need to be avoided. May not be completely, but their intake should be kept to a minimum. It's at times also important that the patient should get an opportunity to speak to someone who is sympathetic and who can understand the patient's problems. So this person who, let us call this person as a helper, this helper could be within the family, it could be a friend, it could be a counselor whom the family can approach. So basically, it's important that this helper or the counselor should be one who is non-judgmental, does not judge the patient based on his or her symptoms, is kind of neutral, objective, a well-meaning person who is very tactful in the advice that is being given to the patient. So a relationship dimension with such a counselor goes a long way. So a good listener, a good counselor can definitely help the process of recovery of the patient. The family might also try to look for groups like schizophrenia support group. Many cities in India today have these kind of groups where the patient with schizophrenia and his or her family can approach. And there are group sessions in which the patient and the families, they discuss with each other, try to learn from others, see that they are not alone in fighting with this difficult illness, get ideas about how to cope with the patient's behavior, how to cope with the multiple stresses that they are facing. And lastly, the family has an important role in the rehabilitation of the patient. Rehabilitation basically means that once the patient's symptoms have subsided, like for example, he has stopped hearing the voices that he was hearing, or he has stopped being convinced that people are out to harm him or people are talking about him and all those so-called delusions that the patient has, then he often comes to a level where he is without any positive symptoms, but he is without enthusiasm to work. He has lost his initial zest of life. He has lost his social skills of communicating with people. So that's the kind of situation where a rehabilitation is really helpful. And there are rehabilitation centers, many of them all over the country, which are manned by multiple specialities. So it's a multi-pronged approach, basically aimed at slowly bringing the patient back to a normal life, assimilation of the patient to a normal pre-morbid life is the ultimate aim of schizophrenia. And as you can see, I have mentioned multiple roles of the friends and the family, where not only the medication or the pill, but all these psychological social techniques can really help. Thank you.